America's workforce. Its strength is our nation's success. Join Ronnie Spellman on I Build America podcast as we explore innovative solutions and inspiring stories from leaders and workers shaping America. Discover actionable insights to build a motivated workforce.
Welcome to the I Build America podcast. I'm here with a fantastic guest. We're in the state of Virginia as we talk about workforce development. So I have the commissioner for Virginia Works here in the state of Virginia, Nicole Overley. Nicole, welcome.
Thank you. It's great to be here.
I'm excited to be with you. In Virginia, you are innovating. You're changing the way workforce happens. Your governor here in Virginia has decided to make workforce one of the most critical pieces of his legacy as the governor of the state. And you get to lead that entire transition for the state of Virginia. I'm excited to have you here. I think what you're doing could be a model or at least inspiration to all the other states across the country as they start to look differently at workforce development. So tell us about your program and what you do and introduce yourself to not only the U.S., but the world.
All right. Thank you. So thank you again for having me today. My name is Nicole Overley, and I'm Commissioner of Virginia Works, also known as the Department of Workforce Development and Advancement. It is about a 9-month-old state agency.
9 months old.
9 months old.
I guess.
State agency in Virginia. It went live on July 1st of last year, and I've been in this role as commissioner for about 6 months. So not too long on the job so far.
Well, congratulations to you.
It's great. It's been an incredible opportunity to really dive into my deep passion for workforce development and helping people prepare for careers and make pivots, I think, through the many changes that come with being part of the workforce today. So we are really trying to meet the moment, I think, for workforce development in this effort around this agency.
So do me a favor then, as we talk about workforce. I haven't done this with any of our other guests, but you're right in the heart of doing something very, very new and innovative. But tell me what is workforce to you and to the governor and to the state of Virginia? I think that definition and elaboration would be useful as we look at collaborations between not only job seekers, but employers who need employees at various different industries and communities across the state. But what is workforce to you? And then let's go through what it is that Virginia Works does.
First of all, I think it's a great question because I think it's way too easy to stop and think that workforce is about your first job and beyond.
Right.
But workforce development, really, if we think about it only as the job that you have, we really miss out, I think, on opportunities to build career paths that work, to recognize that those career paths really change a lot, more and more probably for today's workforce than they ever have before, and that being prepared for a career has to start in your K-12 educational experience. And it doesn't stop when you're done with that educational experience, too. You need to be really on a lifelong learning journey as your career evolves, your life evolves. And so I think of workforce development very much as that whole experience. It's a multi-act play, as I've heard some people describe it. And really at every point in the journey, that intersection between the needs of the job seeker or the individual and the needs of the employer is critical. And it's that intersection that we help navigate for all of us who are in workforce development. It's the translator role and the connector role at every stage of that journey.
Right. So the state of Virginia in 2023 passed legislation to create your operation. And now you're building it out. I've been a part of ramp-ups in new businesses, but it's a different responsibility, not only ramping up the agency, but then taking parts of other agencies and consolidating them. Tell us about the organization size, scope, how many employees you have, and what does that transition look like for you now?
Yeah, well, first of all, I have to say it's like living in a world of both a startup and a merger at the same time, which is not an easy feat for anyone, either at the leadership level or for our staff. We've had to do a lot to make sure that we really manage effectively through change and build the culture that we want. We have about 350 employees across the Commonwealth. Some of them are in Richmond, which is where I'm based, which is the state capital. But a good number of them are in American Job Centers, or what's called Virginia Career Works workforce centers all across the Commonwealth. And they're part of many teams. They provide many services for veterans, for those who are unemployed. We provide labor market information for the state. We provide registered apprenticeship programs. So we're the state apprenticeship agency. We're getting deeper into a broad statewide commitment on work-based learning. And we're doing that very much in partnership with a community college, with our local workforce development boards. So a lot of partnership, a lot of change, and a lot of balancing kind of that experience for our transitioning employees who have joined this agency, whether they're with us in the headquarters space, our new headquarters, right, or out in the field serving Virginians every day.
Right. Now, you kind of glossed over a lot of what you're doing. I often tell people there are some really great professors and people who are good from a practice standpoint. So whatever their expertise is, they're really good at it. And then when they get into the classroom, they're so used to speaking their language that for those people that are just learning it, it's a lot to take in, and they kind of gloss over it. Now, you mentioned a lot just to hear statement, but your partnerships across the entire state with the one-stop centers and the different community boards, that is a massive effort.
It is.
Trying to understand what they're doing at the local level, and then how do you bridge the gap, and how do you connect them, as you mentioned, serving as a connector. What does that look like? And here's something that I'm not sure that you may or may not really understand or appreciate is you're in the world here in Virginia, and all these other states are looking at you to see what you're doing and how you're doing it because they might follow a similar path. And getting that glimpse of the details and technical part of what you're doing could be so critical to them. So, yeah, walk us through some of what that feels like and why the partnership's important. How do you collaborate with those different boards in an industry? I know it's a lot to ask in a single question, but we'd love to learn more.
So let's first take a step back and talk maybe just to your point on just the extremely kind of technical complexity of workforce. Right. Before we even get to partnerships, let me tell you a little bit about our internal work, how I've tried to reorganize some of the ways that we think internally about what this agency is, because I think it's really interesting. You know, in workforce, essentially what you have is a whole mix of programs. One of the reasons why this agency was created is that when the governor took office and our Secretary of Labor, Brian Slater, started to look at everything in his remit as the Secretary of Labor, he saw just this humongous variation of programs that serve all different types of needs that Virginians have and that employers have, and really this challenge in connecting the dots so that the client-facing view of those programs was easy to navigate, right? That's always the challenge, is a better client experience. So with that as the frame, one of the things we have done, and one of the things that has been my real focus at the very beginning when I came to Virginia Works, was to try to decrease that complexity and that mental load on the staff members who are working in the agency, and then those who are trying to interact externally with it, partners and clients.
Exactly.
And so we really started to look at a much more cross-functional organizational structure. So we have gone through very much over the last 6 months a transformation journey to recognize the aspects of different programs, because the program teams were what came into the agency. Where were we doing work that I would consider to be really strategy and policy work? Okay. Where does our technology and our data live across all of our programs?
Sure.
What is helping us? Where are we trying to do outcomes measurement and improvement? And then what are we actually doing on a day-to-day basis that would be considered kind of base operations, service delivery in the field? And so we built this much more cross-functional structure, and we're operationalizing that now. And one of the things that I think is really helpful about it is it provides a much more easier way for external partners to interact with this agency, because they need to interact with us on all of those same different fronts, right? They're looking to us to work with us on technology. They have data needs. We're trying to share data between us, right? We are sometimes delivering services together in an American Job Center, in a one-stop center. There's many partners, not just Virginia Works, that come together. And so we've really been trying to make sure that we train ourselves internally for that cross-functional type of work. It's interesting because we are a government agency. Government actually, I think, is highly matrixed when you look at the ways that it operates, but I don't think that we in government often think of it that way.
Sure.
I think sometimes it's easier to actually know that complexity in order to operate within it. It's harder when it's really complex and you don't really know how to operationalize what that complexity means for your day to day. And so we've really been trying to articulate that to our staff and to our partners. And when a new initiative comes along from the governor's office or with our partners or a new funding opportunity, it is our goal to stand up a cross-functional team, project-based team that can work in partnership to accomplish that goal, continuously refine it and improve, and then to give the right context for that base operations that are ongoing.
Right.
So partnership looks like a whole lot of different things, I think, on the ground in workforce development. But I think the way that you operationalize a lot of those day-to-day experiences of who works together on what, where do you go for what types of information that you need, those are the challenges any big organization has. I think it's the challenge the workforce system has. It's one of the biggest challenges we've been trying to resolve with the way that we've been operating in Virginia to solve the problem that created us, right? Just a huge amount of complexity to try to help people and job seekers navigate.
Right. That's amazing. So it sounds like you were built for this opportunity based on your work in the private sector. So you worked at Deloitte for a while dealing with similar premises, right?
I did. It's interesting because I think that it certainly prepared me for two things I think that are core guiding principles of what I do. One being a client-centric mindset,
Yes.
and the second being, navigating the complexity of a lot of matrixed operations in a very rapidly changing environment. I think every aspect of government has to be both proactive and reactive to some degree. Workforce, I think, especially so. At least it feels that way to us because we have sector and industry changes around us, economic landscape changes, federal government changes, state government changes. Virginia's the only state in the nation with a one-term governor.
I talk a lot about that, by the way.
Yeah.
It makes it hard to get continuity, not interrupting. It makes it hard to get continuity in your projects because you're lame duck governor the day you're elected.
Well, and there's a lot of complexity that comes with frequent change, and change is great in a lot of ways. I mean, it really helps us, I think, drive forward much of what we want to be trying to do. But it gets, if you don't put the right frame around it to make sure that the consistency is there when needed, change can be fatiguing.
Right.
And we know that. And so I having dealt with a lot of that, having helped clients through change in my former life, and having just really built this client-centric attitude. At Virginia Works, we say we are relentlessly client-centric.
Yes.
If we did not have our client, individuals and employers there to serve, there would be no point to what we do. And so it's easy, I think, amidst all the things going on that we need to be doing on a day-to-day basis, it's easy to lose sight of that.
It is.
We are really trying to bring back that relentless focus to our base operations every single day.
That's important and critical. How does data analytics play? You mentioned data analytics, data collection, labor statistic data, and every state has their own way of doing it. I work with some of the competitors of Deloitte on their data analytics and using software to present it a certain way, and with other business industries. That data is so huge. The unique thing about data collection now is that it's being collected very fast and there's so much data. The challenge that I've seen across the country with some of the governments is they're not positioned to respond to the changing data that companies are using to make business decisions. So when they go to a state, they're looking for information so they can make a pretty quick decision. And if it takes too long, states are losing out on opportunities. So walk me through the data from kind of your labor statistic data and then how you're using that to interact with businesses.
So it's a really interesting question because we, as a workforce entity, have to think about and use data in a multitude of contexts. One is we're trying to get better and actually really understanding the capacity of the workforce system and the capacity of our team to serve Virginians given different types of events. So in the event of a layoff, in the event of any kind of natural disaster, we were integral in getting boots on the ground to support individuals impacted by Hurricane Helene in the fall in Southwest Virginia. We have to kind of move our capacity around in the field in real time. And I think that's one basic aspect of our business, right? That's very similar to, any other business operating environment. But we also then have this other additional layer of data that is critical to give us the right frame for what we do and to give the right equip or really equip policymakers in the right ways for the decisions that they need to be making around the different types of programs and services that are needed to support the way that Virginia's economy is changing and the skills that Virginians need. And so on the latter front, in this agency, we do house our Virginia's Economic Information and Analytics team. We work very closely. You may be familiar with the Virginia Office of Education Economics at VEDP, the Economic Development Partnership, and that is really a nation-leading effort, that office, which is pretty newly established also, to bring together a lot of the education and workforce data and project out supply and demand, project out industry and sector change, create our high demand occupations list, which is becoming the backbone that we use from a workforce system standpoint around training and educational programs to make sure that we have programs that are training to jobs that are in demand from employers. And so really, we're trying to put all of those tools together. I think one of the things that's really interesting for me is how we intake and balance that data. And by the way, we could be a lot better. We're getting a lot better. A few weeks ago, we actually just launched for the first time a dashboard on our active apprenticeships across the Commonwealth.
Fantastic.
So that is essentially real-time data on apprenticeships that are active geographically by industry. It's showing us where we have the most apprenticeships, where we have room to grow. And it's things like that we're trying to get more of in terms of real-time data. But it's how we partner with VOE and a lot of the labor market data to try to do a better job tracking outcomes. And I could also tell you all about, but you can tell me if you want to ask me this question or not. We've been embarking on a Commonwealth-wide metrics effort to track outcomes across all workforce programs, not just those in this agency. That's also something not a lot of states have had the opportunity to embark upon, and we're learning every day we do it, but we are really trying to drive longer-term outcomes and longitudinal data too.
So tell us more about it. If it's something that's unique to Virginia that a lot of other states aren't doing yet, that is critical. The apprentice tracking is really fascinating to me.
Yeah.
So think about that for a moment, but I think it's important for people that might not be familiar with Virginia. Virginia is still about 12 million people-ish, roughly around that arena. And so it's not as large as some of the other states in population, but Virginia is very complex geography, dynamics. You have Northern Virginia, which feels like another state oftentimes. And then you have Richmond right in the middle of it, which is its own region. And then you have that southeastern part of the state. And then you get out to the western part of the state, which, again, it feels like another state as well. And so the bigger states think that they're complex because of their geographic dynamics, but Virginia is very, very complex. Northern Virginia sits, between Maryland and D.C. and these other different regions. And so the complexity that I would think that you have to work with from a business perspective, because you have so many different industries in those different parts of the regions, is extremely complex. You have farming still as a part of your operations across the state.
Yep.
It's very complex. So to build out some of these tracking programs, I can only imagine how difficult it might be. But I'm amazed that you're doing it. And the other piece, from an industry standpoint, you have the Newport News shipbuilding that's there. You have the Virginia Port Authority, which is a large port. You have San Diego, or at least you have Long Beach in California, and then some of the other ports around the country. But that Norfolk Port Authority, or the Virginia Port Authority, is a major, major operation. But walk us through the apprentice first and what you mentioned that's unique to Virginia, and then let's discuss the industries.
Yeah, absolutely. And I have to say, the breadth and depth of Virginia, rural and urban, the number of different regional economies, the number of almost kind of cross-state regional economies, as you mentioned, the DMV, down here in Hampton Roads, and in Southwest Virginia. It's just fascinating to me. It's one of the reasons why I love this Commonwealth so much. In just a couple hours of driving, you can get from mountains to beach here.
The Blue Ridge is just beautiful, and
something that I really love about it.
The other piece, again, don't lose your train of thought, but the number of federal employees that are in the state that you kind of have to manage. The military volume in the state is just amazing.
It's significant.
It is. And Virginia, and again, I know I'm throwing out a lot of topics, but what Virginia's done for our veterans is probably among the best in the country. The V3 program, the Virginia Values Veterans Programs, just amazing. I participated with that through my companies that were based here. But there's just a lot. More than anything, I just wanted to establish that Virginia isn't just a small state with maybe a few industries. It's extremely complex.
Yes, it is. It absolutely is. And let's also park, but we can talk later about the newly launched Virginia Veterans Network, too, which is another portal and resource launched off the B3 program for veterans. So lots happening in that space.
Wonderful.
But on outcomes, so because everything that we do, even our veterans programs, we really do try to make sure that we are back to the point of data and all that. We're really trying to understand outcomes and make sure that outcomes are continuously driving performance improvement. Right. And I think that's, I think of it as a cycle, right? You have to understand your clients. We deliver services to our clients in any government service, any government program.
Or any business, by the way.
Or any business, right, exactly. We're delivering services. We understand what those are. And then we have to be tracking and managing outcomes. And that has to inform how the cycle starts again, right? Of understanding the client and delivering services. And so I'm very much trying to think of that very simple service delivery life cycle. And across Virginia's workforce ecosystem, really try to put into practice not just measuring outcomes for the sake of outcomes, because I think it's far too easy to get ground up in data for the sake of having the data, or the performance measurement for the sake of performance management, but performance measurement that actually drives recognition of opportunities for improvement.
Okay.
And making sure that part of the cycle is returned to the actual service delivery,
right?
And that we're continuously improving, right? Because that is really ultimately the point. If we're tracking the data we have to be able to understand how it's going to improve for the next go round. Right. And so we are just over a year. Actually, this effort started before the agency officially went live. We're just over a year through a first round of metrics tracking for all Commonwealth-wide state-funded workforce programs. And so I mentioned earlier that there had been kind of a mapping effort, an ecosystem mapping effort done by the Secretary's office and by this administration even before the agency went live. And that found 70 plus workforce programs that sat in many, many secretariats, many agencies. And the majority of them, many of them are still where they were, right? It didn't make sense to move every single one of those programs based on their business function and who they serve. It didn't make sense to move all of those necessarily into Virginia Works. But what does make sense, and I think the goal of this agency was for it to be able to serve in kind of a convening function and to set some best practices, bring together the broader network of programs. And so we have been engaging on a really monthly basis with every single one of those programs. We have someone in a new role of workforce outcomes coordinator.
Kind of like a liaison.
Yeah, exactly. And that individual coordinates with all those programs, gathers data from them, and we're in the process of dashboarding that data. And we're also in the process of setting baselines for improvement and talking to them about really getting a better understanding of what they do, who they serve, connections that can be made between their programs and others, because ultimately then we can allow more people to access those programs, right? So it's outcomes and it's data, but it's also very much about building that network, breaking down barriers and silos between programs, even those that don't live in Virginia Works. And I think that is one function of this agency that I think is very unique. I don't think many state workforce agencies necessarily are given by legislation, and we are, this opportunity to be kind of a convener and a best practices sharer. And we very much are looking forward to and continue to use that opportunity in very positive ways, I think, to connect dots that maybe hadn't been connected before, with town halls and all kinds of other things to connect the people working in those programs.
That's amazing.
That's something that I think at this point in time, we're really proud of as an agency, that how that work's been going.
So you're in your first 6 months.
Yes.
What do you think the next 6 months will look like?
I think the next 6 months for this agency are moving us past a lot of the initial transformation of being that combination of startup and merger, to refining our processes and building a strategic plan for the next few years.
Okay.
And I think that's going to be an interesting process. Obviously, there are dynamics at play that are impacting our strategic planning economically and in a variety of other ways. And I think it's going to be a really interesting moment in time. I think we as an agency have really, in the last 6 months, endeavored to build a lot of agility and resiliency into our operations. And I think that we're going to need that to really drive us forward. I think we're really going to be looking at some initiatives around AI upskilling for Virginians. I think we're really going to be looking at how we get to the governor's goal of doubling apprenticeships by the end of his administration, which we have a little bit of a ways to go still, but we've been making a lot of traction there. And we know work-based learning works. We know apprenticeship works. We see the executive orders and some of the direction coming out from the U.S. Department of Labor on the focus on apprenticeships and work-based learning. And so I think we're well positioned there to keep driving forward on growth and have been doing a lot around capacity building there. So, just a few of the things I think that will make it into our being drafted strategic plan right now. But I think, we're really always trying to make sure that we are looking around at the environment around us, as we always have to do, and building a plan that we can operationalize no matter what comes over the months to come.
I hadn't had a chance to research this, but someone recently mentioned to me that I think it was relative to AI. There is an initiative where they're paying people to take courses and to get the certifications in AI in Virginia. And again, I hadn't researched that, so I'd have to do more research before giving more details. But I thought it was pretty innovative what they were planning to do around AI education.
Yeah, I'm not sure I'm familiar with that one, but I will say that I believe we've had a number of Virginia higher education institutions really launch into some really innovative AI upskilling types of programs. And I know there are some, ranging from, because I think this is kind of an interesting topic, boot camps that, that you can jump into if you're looking to be upskilled in AI and apply it to whatever job you're in. And then we also have some of the first programs in the country, full-on master's programs in AI so that you can make a pivot into being a prompt engineer, et cetera. And actually last week on National Apprenticeship Day, I had the opportunity in Northern Virginia to be there for the unveiling of the nation's first AI data annotator apprenticeship.
Fantastic.
And so I think we're also seeing apprenticeship programs launched in AI related and adjacent fields. So I think there's just a lot of opportunity there to, as I see it, continue to help people recognize how AI may impact the work they do every day. We all are trying to experiment with what exactly that means, and also to show Virginians that there's likely to be an increasing amount of opportunity if you're interested in to pivot into a truly AI-driven job or field. So I think there's a lot of opportunity there.
And it sounds like you're doing some of this. I met a company some years ago. It was a company founder based out of California. I think he founded a nonprofit, and he was traveling the country to partner with high schools, because his opinion is for software developers, they didn't necessarily need to go to college and get a software engineering degree, that he could put them through roughly a 6-week program and they could become significant experts. So he was trying to help people understand that you didn't need to spend 4 years in college. Now that college is not a good option, but you could enter into that profession, make very good living, and not have to spend the 4 years in college. And so it sounds like Virginia is looking at multiple vehicles for getting people into that AI and other technology industries.
Yep, absolutely. I would absolutely say so. And I think, to my point earlier, I think that kind of that reflects the fact that it's just such a broad topic right now, right? It's impacting everything in different ways. You can get the type of learning that you need depending on where you're trying to take a job in that field through a lot of different mechanisms. And I think we want to make as many of those available to Virginians as we can.
That's fantastic. Well, it sounds like you're doing a wonderful, wonderful job. Congratulations on the role and the setup of the new department. It seems extremely innovative. Where would people go to find you if they wanted to look up? If there's another governor preparing to run for office or just won election or preparing to do something different and innovative, where would they find you online?
Great question. So that's been another big initiative we've been in progress of. You start something new, you have to create new websites, new everything else. So 2 sites I would suggest taking a look at. One, first and foremost, being virginiahasjobs.com. So if you have not heard about it, that site is our really simple to use launchpad to take a look at career opportunities available to you in Virginia. We continue to add to it every day. And so not only are we highlighting employers in different regions, both public and private sector, linking to LinkedIn and Indeed and other places where you may go to find jobs. But also highlighting a lot of the upskilling opportunities and different training opportunities available, linking to the resources of many of our partners. So that's a one-stop shop, especially if you are a career seeker looking for what your next move might be. If you are interested in getting a little bit of a broader sense of Virginia Works' services, where you can access resources in person, and just kind of a general overview of what we do, whether you are a business or a job seeker or an individual, you can go to virginiaworks.gov, and that page continues to get built out more and more every day.
Very cool.
So I'm very excited for some of what we're planning on adding to it soon as well.
And you just reminded me, even though you've been discussing this throughout our conversation, but I think sometimes when we get into conversations that might be either policy or technical, we will often focus, especially from the economic development specialist, we focus on the business partnerships. But for that individual, for those 12 million Virginians or anyone looking to move to Virginia, there is an opportunity for you to do and build a career if you're looking to make a transition to something different, or you just want to understand what different opportunities are available. You're the place to look for that.
I would say so. And you know what we say, and what I would say to anyone who's looking to make a shift or start their first role in Virginia or move to Virginia, you have options. Your skills are transferable, I think, more now than ever before. And we have the resources to help you do that, whether it means you need some coaching, resume review, you're looking for reskilling options. Virginia has some incredible resources through the community college system and others that really can help you access whatever's next for you. And I think it's a really dynamic place to be right now.
Well, and you mentioned colleges. I think it's worth pointing out Virginia has some amazing colleges and universities and community colleges and amazing high schools. The Thomas Jefferson High School in Northern Virginia is just top notch. And you have schools like that spread across the country. I think they're still number one in the country for public high schools, if I remember correctly. And then you've got the University of Virginia and James Madison and Old Dominion University and Virginia Wesleyan and Hampton University. And you have just an amazing set of opportunities, K through 12, college, and people that are looking to go directly into the workforce. So a lot of business partnerships. Nicole, it's been a pleasure to have you on the program.
Thank you.
I'm excited to hear more about where you're headed, and it was exciting to hear about what you're doing.
Awesome. Sounds great. Thank you. Virginia Works for everyone.
Thank you.
Thanks for having me.
Thank you for joining us on I Build America podcast, where we're trying to make a difference as we look at workforce development across the country. Thank you.
Thank you for listening to the I Build America podcast. Please subscribe, share, and comment, and be sure to join us next time for more insights and inspiring conversations on building a powerful American workforce. I Build America, building workforce success one podcast at a time.